Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Trauma Translator with your host, Lauren Friedman. I'm here today, hopefully, welcoming guest Owen Marcus. And today's a really special podcast. As you know, my father, Howard, was one of the main inspirations behind the How Are You Healing Revolution and also just the Why Go Project. Men's work is really important to me. The month of February we were talking about was being celebrated in a little bit of different way of finding love for yourself, love for others. Last week we had Ramses from QRF up on, and he's going to be back in future weeks so we could give him the spotlight that he really deserves for his beautiful heart-led mission. And today I'm really excited to welcome Owen because men's work is something that's really important to me personally because between my father, my suicide spirit guided mission, but also I spent the last 20 years sitting next to a man who loves me more than anything. And I loved him. And we still couldn't communicate properly until literally last week after we've already been divorced, after we've already gone through all these legal things. And it was literally at a moment where he could only speak his truth to me. And he felt safe enough to when there was a life or death type of legal situation. So what I'm really on this mission to do is really help others find connection to themselves, connection to each other, and connection to a higher power, finding those resources to really be able to speak your truth, not live in shame. And men aren't given all the proper resources. We as humans aren't given all the proper resources. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Owen Marcus, and he can share a little bit more about his mission.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you so much for coming here. I really appreciate having you on. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, yes, I work with men. I got into working with men 30 years ago because I needed to work on myself because my relationships weren't what I wanted. And I realized I was a consistent variable. So I needed to change myself. Someone suggested men's work. My first reaction was, no way, that's weird. That's woo-woo. It's strange. I'm not doing that. And then I realized if I had so much resistance, maybe there was something there. Started my first men's group out of my integrated medical clinic in Scottsdale. And over the course of those 30 years, done many men's groups, and it evolved to be 3 different businesses because 20 years ago, I started a new model that involved somatics or, the body,
Yes.
And dealing with trauma and dealing with stress. And that really became a very easy way to connect to men and have men connect to themselves and work with their emotions and connect with others. And like I said, that's just taken off ever since.
Yeah. I mean, 30 years ago, you're a pioneer in the space. Like I don't know if you know my background, but both of my parents were therapists. I was in therapy since I was 5, but it doesn't take into account the mind-body connection, right? So you could be in psychotherapy for your whole life and not have any of these things. Is Owen still with us? Oh, yeah, you're there. I just want to make sure. You could be in psychotherapy your whole life and it keeps you stuck in your head and you need to get into your body. So it was actually an integrative physician at my gym who was my friend first, my friend from CrossFit, actually, where I'd scaled to 14 hours a week. And I was still almost 300 pounds multiple times, even though I was starving myself. I was taking 60 laxatives a night. I was working out to the point, I was in lifelong undiagnosed survival mode. So this integrative physician also lost her father to suicide. And before she was my doctor, before I was being treated properly in a somatic way, she was able to solve almost 4 decades of disparate somatic responses to trauma. And when she had come to me, in confidence, letting me know what happened with her father before she was my doctor, I knew that there was a broader mission. I wasn't even being treated yet, but it was the first time I cried ever for anybody that I could have remembered. And I didn't know why. I didn't even know how to cry. So I have spent a majority of my life being kind of like the man whisperer, the divorced dudes whisperer, because men need help. And, there's a lot of shame associated with just speaking. Like you said, woohoo, and like hoo-ha, all of those things. Like my father was trying to heal himself his whole life. He was a therapist. So for you to be doing this for the last 30 years, I really commend you. Like it's a beautiful thing. And I love the way you talk about being able to build emotional capacity. Like it's CrossFit for your emotions. I think that's just such a wonderful metaphor. Tell us a little bit about how you even started in that, because, in an integrative physician practice 30 years ago, that didn't really exist. So tell me a little bit more about that. I'm just curious.
Well, it actually goes back 50 years. I was in Boulder, Colorado. I was living with a group of guys. I had a roommate that had given up his law practice to learn and moved out from Florida to learn somatics. And he argued his case so well. I said, all right. If I try it, will you shut up? And he said, yeah. And I tried it and I was sold and spent 4 years in Boulder. It was sort of like postgraduate training because that was the epicenter back then for all the somatic work. That's where a lot of these somatic therapies that are so popular today started. And I, became friends with these founders, trained with them. And it really set me on a course where in 1980, I moved down to Phoenix, started a practice that ended up being a small integrated medical clinic. So I always saw, how working with the body made a difference because it made a difference with me. I later realized in graduate school that, I grew up with dyslexia and didn't know I was dyslexic, but I knew I struggled in school. And then I later realized I had Asperger's, which really explained a lot of my emotional strain and stress. And I healed a lot of that, but really it was a lot of working with these men and being in these groups every week that I really developed these emotional skills that I didn't have, but I also realized no other men had. I, like a lot of men, thought I was the only one that was messed up. And one of the first things guys realize in these trainings and groups is that they're not alone. Every guy has these, I wouldn't call them disabilities, but at least challenges. And
Spots, right?
realize that we start to change.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing, men. So I have a lot of compassion for men because I literally sat next to a man for the last 20 years who couldn't speak. He couldn't speak, how you do anything is how you do everything. He couldn't speak in his professional life. He couldn't speak in his personal life. He couldn't, he felt really isolated. And one of the reasons when I went to market, I wanted to build out something for when we got divorced. So he had people to witness him, to feel not as alone, because it's really hard. You can't even give a compliment to a woman without being a weirdo, right? Or to each other without being quote unquote gay. So the thing is if you feel like you can't speak your truth, it lives in your body. And what you were just talking about, you've been like an early emerging person in this environment. And that's kind of what I think about. I spent the last 20 years in advertising and technology, which is why I call this the Trauma Translator, because I've been translating abstract, complex ideas and humanizing them and making them palatable across varying levels of audiences and understanding. And this is kind of like selling emerging technology. People aren't always ready for it. You were doing this for 50 years and people still aren't ready for it. They just started talking about somatics in the last 5 to 10 years. And really only the last 5 years, people started being aware of it. So when you think about dyslexia and even Asperger's, those are all just trauma responses. And I don't really even believe in those diagnoses anymore because we could work through them somatically and reduce those types of symptoms, right? Do you find that in your work when you
I certainly found that with me. I'm still not a good speller, and and my auditory dyslexia affects me, but for the most part, my dyslexia compared to where it was is a lot better. So is my Asperger's. So yeah, I still have remnants of it. But the great thing is I have a lot of special assets of superpowers because of them, which has been one of the reasons that I've been so successful in this work.
I call it survival mode is your superpower. I totally agree with that. I was in lifelong hypervigilance my whole life. So I actually have a photographic, audiographic memory from under the age of 2. So that's what I want to do is help people. I not only that, I think in images, which I didn't know was weird, but I also remember the context of what I thought in those moments. So when you think about complex trauma, right, it affects everyone differently, which is why it's been so hard as a society to even understand it. So what is I did a lot of due diligence. I was really excited to chat with you. So I was all over your website and I saw that you have all of these types of men's circles. And what I really also appreciated was that you were this is for men who have already done work, right? And I don't like using the word doing the work, right? Because it's not work if it becomes integrated into your lifestyle. It's literally how you live your life. It becomes practice. And then it just becomes part of you. And you there's always, you always have to go back healing. Never always be healing, right? You can't just think you're going to be healed, right? There's always something further to heal. But tell me a little bit about MELD and authentic intelligence, because I loved that, and I think that that's a really beautiful way to explain this.
So yeah, we have AI. We know what AI is. This is my AI, authentic intelligence. So this is really what's missing, and not more for men, but I think in the whole culture. So we need connection. We are hardwired for survival, as you know, but we're all hardwired for connection. And social media, it's like junk food. I mean, it feeds us, but it doesn't nourish us up. And so we are always hungry for connection because we need it. And what I found when these men's groups, starting 30 years ago, was it was real authentic connection. And when you put a group of men together and they know it's a safe space, and these spaces are always safe, almost immediately they start opening up. As one guy opens up, it sets up another guy to open up. And pretty quickly, these guys are feeling and sharing things they haven't shared with any adult, maybe their whole life.
Yeah.
Because they feel safe. And so out there in the world, yes, everything you said, and I can say a lot more about how as men, we don't feel, we don't express, we don't connect. But the power of these, trainings and groups is that so many men, way quicker than they would have thought, start to connect first to themselves and then pretty naturally to others. And like we'll do a training within, we'll start at 7:00 at night. By 9:00, when we end that first night, these guys are connected, and they're connected because they felt safe and they just were able to be real. So when we get a state that we are, or we're able to be real in, this authentic intelligence of who we really are just naturally shows up.
Yeah, no, and that's also just like the beauty of being witnessed, right? You need to be witnessed. And that's something that I've actually had to learn on my own too. Like, even though my whole thing is the art and science of connection, which is kind of like what I was doing in ad tech too. It's being able to connect with people, right? But I also felt really isolated. And I was also taught at a young age that I wasn't allowed to have feelings. So one of the reasons I connect deeply with men is because I was like my father's consigliere, and I understand what it's like to be told, like, you're not allowed to feel this. You're not allowed to express emotion. You have to be stoic. You have to take care. I was the caretaker of everybody to the point where now I'm in a dangerous position, and, I'm going to figure it out. I always do. But men have a lot of burdens on their shoulder. And I agree with you. It's not just men, it's women too. 100%. It's the human experience. And it's, being in these circles, like, for people that don't understand it, because I've done a lot of my own trauma work. Everything I do is experiential healing. I've done a lot of indigenous work. Like, everything you do, I love. Like, one of the things, I was in a bad place when I was researching you, and I was like, oh man, I wish I could go to one of his retreats. Like,
women say that all the time. We did have one woman come, one woman that was us there.
Maybe, guess what? I would love to be that woman, because that's something that I truly like. I had a veteran Marine who I'm very much involved in the veteran community, just from CrossFit, but also the veteran community has been so welcoming because my trauma responses deeply resonate with them. Like, I had, this is a human experience problem. And one of the best compliments that anyone's ever given me, he's like, this is a judgment-free zone. And that's the thing about people are afraid to open up, humans, right? But especially men, because women can feel safe sometimes to talk to each other. It's more societal norm, right? Like, you could feel your feelings. It doesn't mean you're processing them. You could be complaining. You could, be still somatizing, right? But you still can express them in some way. But like, men are really so shut down. So when you're doing these, tell us a little bit about what these circles look like for people that don't have any idea. And also go back to a little bit about what this type of work is, because you very clearly on your website say this isn't the first step. This is like the next step after you've tried some things, right?
Right. I mean, we do get a few guys that come in, it's the first thing, but most guys come sort of like you were saying, because they've done therapy or they've done other things, read books or whatever. It helped them a little. But our work, as you know, is bottom up and not top down. So the top down can only be so effective, the cognitive and analytical. And really, for the sustainable change, we need to get that physiology or the stress response or trauma response worked through. And so most guys come and they've had some experience, but they're not where they want to be. And they read the website or they hear about me or whatever, and they start to go, yeah, that makes sense. And one of the first things we say to these guys is, you're not bad, you're not broken, you're not pathological. It's a function of a couple of things. It's a function of trauma and stress. Also, the enculturation that we're talking about, how, you're trained to really shut down, because as boys, up until the age of 2, we're actually more sensitive and more expressive than girls. Yeah. And then we get shut down because of the culture. And so when guys understand that, and they understand that really the problem lies in their physiology or their body, it really sort of de-escalates the shame or the judgments. And then when they start to have these somatic, simple somatic experiences, which is really awareness, they start to change. They go, yeah, all right, I get it. It's not that my head's screwed up. It's just that my body learned to be stressed out or traumatized. and there's a way to change it.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing about the somatic work, and that's why it's so important. Because when I first started trauma therapy in 2022, I was like, I don't understand. I've been in therapy since I was 5. Both my parents were therapists. Why did no one get this? I'm literally a walking picture of complex trauma. Like I broke my arm 7 times as a kid. I've lost and gained over 100 pounds multiple times. I have all of these ways that people didn't get it. I had disordered eating at under 2, but because nobody understood the mind-body connection, it took me till I was almost 40 and having flashbacks and wetting the bed. And while I was interviewing at the biggest companies in the world, and it was terrifying. And, you know, for men who have done some work, have tried things, you know, it really does live in our bodies. And if you don't have a way to release it, right, like you were saying, like the physiological response, that's what this is. And stress is, like I always, one of the things is redefining the human experience through the lens of trauma. And trauma is just stress that overwhelms your ability to cope. So when you talk about boys that, you know, from under the age of 2 that are more expressive, that are more verbal, I love, like, I'm kind of like, I love children. I actually chose not to procreate because I refuse to bring children into dysfunction, but that's part of the reason why I'm going to be launching my nonprofit for kids. And I truly, like, I see it in the kids. They're very verbal. They want to engage. And it's really like they want to express themselves and they become shut down, right? When society starts to conform them, and no one teaches you how to live in your body or how to express your truth. And that shame can literally kill you. Like I call it, like, let that go the way to shame, because that's literally like everything I was carrying, like, and men feel it. And it's really hard to ask for help. So what do you say to men who, like, you know, they want to ask for help at home and they want to get, let's say they can't afford an experience like this. What would you say for men like that?
Well, part of what we just said, that's in your body. So you take it away from them shaming themselves. You give them a little model that sort of gives them hope, and then we got a whole spectrum of things. Some of it's free. We're coming out with an AI app. It's like a coach using this technology for guys, which will be pretty inexpensive. So there's what's for, or maybe they're in, or these men's groups, which is what you asked about before.
Sorry, it's breaking up a little. I don't know if it's my internet.
Which is, a group of guys that, am I there?
I think so.
Yeah. So these guys, want these men's groups because these men's groups are like weekly groups for a few hours, and they learn these skills. So they realize a lot of it is a skill thing and not a psychological thing.
Yeah.
And they get the support. And then they also realize, and this is the authentic intelligence part, that just being themselves is a contribution for these other men.
Yes.
And so, as you said, and I think it's an important point, is that we need witnesses, we need sponsors. And what happened as a kid, we didn't have that. We had the opposite of that, at least around our emotional development and maybe our physiological development. So in these groups, they're safe. Guys really are champions. And it's not that they're confronting us, they're supporting us. And I've seen men literally come out on public, on a documentary that was done on us, saying that if it wasn't for this group, I would have killed myself.
Yeah.
That's the extreme.
I don't even think, but to me, that's not even extreme. I really think that that's a real problem in society. Like, one of the reasons I also went to market was because, the suicide mission, right? Like I've lost coworkers to suicide after all of these things. And that's a very real thing. And to be able to not be in competition with men, but to be able to welcome men, right, in these really safe spaces is something that doesn't happen generally in society. Like you could dap your bro, but you're not gonna cry to him generally. So I think that that's really a special environment. When you talk about these weekly groups, are they done virtually, or in person? How do they work?
Both. When I've been in weekly live groups for close to 30 years, and COVID happened, and that we moved to virtual. It was actually better than I would have thought. So I moved from this town. So 20 years ago, I started this new men's group called the Sandpoint Men's Group up in North Idaho near the Canadian border, using this model of somatics and everything else I learned, because I saw the other model just wasn't working for men, and the groups weren't really all that effective. And I didn't think it'd take off. So in the course of 20 years, we've had over 500 guys in this group, currently over 60 guys, 6 groups. One of the groups is a Zoom group that I'm in for expats, because I moved away from Sandpoint. And so it could go either way, live or virtual. And, you know, it's really pretty simple. Every guy sort of checks in at first, you know, what's happening in this moment in their body and their emotions. And then, you know, they work on whatever they want to work on. And we might have a theme, or they might work on what's up for them. And for some guys, you know, every week is something big, and we really help them through the process. And one of the key things about the approach that I developed is it's not about giving advice. It's not about telling the guy what he should do or analyzing him or any of that. The core of our work is you take the man deeper into his experience, which
Yeah.
might be through his body at first, but into his experience. Because my belief, and now my experience, is that when we get connected to the disconnected parts of ourselves, we are more resourced, and almost inevitably we can start to solve the problems that we might initially think are insurmountable.
I mean, 100%. We need to deepen into ourselves in order to become whole, right? Because we feel so like I was so disconnected from myself. I didn't even know I had a body. I knew I was at war with it since I was born. But when I first started trauma work, everyone's like, get into your body. And I was like, what the F does that mean? Like, I don't understand that, you know?
Right.
And that's the thing, is like, I had to learn to love all parts of myself. And no one ever teaches you how to love yourself. That's why I want to help people find these resources, like people like you, other people doing men's work. I also do one-on-one coaching, consulting, whatever you want to call it. Just because men have always come to me as a safe space. I also spent my career in tech and advertising, which is a predominantly male field, right? And I never felt like I was in competition with these men. In fact, they were my friends. They came to me for support. We helped each other. So, you know, if they thought they were in competition with me, that's their problem, not mine, you know? But I truly, like, I feel for a lot of men, especially divorced men, and like all of these things that keep us separated and isolated. And, you know, I just think it's really important when men have the opportunity, humans, but men have the opportunity to connect with each other, especially even in a Zoom environment. I agree with you. Like, these types of things, events, experiential healing would really generally start in person, right? Before the pandemic. And now there are these options to connect in a deeper way to yourself and others through all these different variables. I agree with you, by the way, too, about AI. Even though my background's in tech, this is a very human problem. And everybody at Reveting definitely understands. I'm like, no AI unless it has purpose. And so I would love to learn more about that as you continue to release that, because I think it's really important to leverage these tools in a responsible way that can actually help humans, right? It's not a replacement for a human, but it's just it's a stopgap. So I am working with some AI veteran solutions and things like that. So tell us a little bit about what you're coming out with, because that's really interesting.
Yeah. So it's really focused on what I just said, taking the guy deeper and giving them cues or prompts that, per his question or his issue, that takes him deeper into his experience, so that, you know, the AI app or chat or whatever is not giving him suggestions. It's more or less asking him questions. And the feedback has been really better than I would have expected. That guys, I've given it, you know, I built an alpha, and now we're working on the beta, and the feedback's been like, yeah, you know, I ask it this question and it starts helping me by taking me into my body and my emotions, my experience, and it's not telling me anything. It's, you know, guiding me. And so it's a tool, but as you said, you know, tech can be a great tool, or it can be a great escape or distraction. And then, you know, my purpose is to use this as a tool to guide men, and honestly, hopefully guide them into more real, live, intimate interactions with people, because at the end of the day, that's where it has to be.
100%. And actually, Connor just commented the same thing. Like, I agree with you. This is not a replacement for human connection. 100%. Talking to an actual person is always the best solution, but that's not always available, right? Like, at all times of day. So this is a good stopgap. I would love to give that to my ex-husband. He could use all the resources possible. Like, he actually, a year ago at this time, I would have described him as my biggest success story in therapy, but then a lot of crazy things happened since, but he's doing wonderful. And I'm really proud of him, because he didn't come from a background that I did, right? Like, therapy was like, honestly, going to the supermarket for my family. Like, that was a panacea for everything. If there was a problem in the house, we're going to family therapy. That didn't solve anything. It actually, it really just made things just more annoying, you know? And so I've seen bad therapy. I've had bad therapists. I've had good therapists. I was raised by therapists, you know? And I just think it's really important that the somatic work and those questions, right, to get a man deeper into his body, to even understand how to do that. Like, you could be working with people that have never even been in their body, because when you know, trauma takes you out of your body and into your head, and it's really hard to get into your body. So what do you say to a man who, you know, is interested in exploring this, but has never participated in any of these types of experiential healing events? Would you, like, how would you suggest, like, starting?
Just try. I mean, even at a simple level of like doing the AI or, you know, getting one of our free downloads, it can be a little challenging for a guy, but you got nothing to lose. And you know, I've been working with guys for all these years and thousands of men, one to one. And what I realized many years ago, particularly for men, it's like our pain has to be greater than the fear, but it really doesn't. But that's sort of how we're hardwired. So I've had friends and colleagues, you know, and girlfriends that were dentists, doctors, and all these other professionals. And the real joke is that so often a guy does not go to get help until he really needs it, where a woman tends to go sooner. And I want to change that. So, yeah, using us or someone else to, you know, develop your emotional or relational or even somatic skills is not that there's something wrong with you. It's just, well, you're learning something. And you would do that if you wanted to learn another sport. If you wanted to learn tennis, you wouldn't just go out and play tennis. You'd probably take a lesson or two and develop the skills before you played the sport. And this is essentially what it is, because you didn't, particularly men, did not get any modeling or training in how to connect to their bodies, connect to their emotions, or connect to other people. And it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility to go get the training you need.
And I agree with you. This isn't a faulty type of thing. Like, when I talk about men are in crisis, it's not a shaming thing. It's literally like, this is what's happening in society, because, like you said, there's no modeling. The modeling was, you have to be strong, you have to be stoic, you have to keep your feelings to yourself, you have to lead. And like, some men just aren't built to lead. And like, it's really hard when you have a more emotional, effeminate background, and it's hard to, you know, blend into society and figure out how to get that help. Because quite honestly, like, I didn't even know this existed. I'd been in therapy forever, that like, I was like, how is anyone going to help me at this point? Like, I couldn't imagine even when I was at my rock bottom and I was having flashbacks and wetting the bed. I've never even taken a psychiatric medicine. I would if it was prescribed to me. Like, I've never even taken a Xanax, but it affected my thyroid and it made me feel like, honestly, suicidal. And I didn't know that anyone could even help me, because I didn't know that this was an option. So yeah, you're right. It's not shameful and it is your responsibility, but just having the understanding, the education that this exists is some of the barriers to entry, like even for someone who grew up in therapy. So I think it is really beautiful what you're doing. Tell us, what does MELD stand for again?
Men's Emotional Leadership Development. And so a lot of what we do is really giving these guys their own resources to be leaders in their life, leaders in their business. So we work a lot with entrepreneurs and C-level guys, and they usually come to it because they want to improve their relationships, which happens pretty quickly. And then, you know, they're working with us to take this system or approach into their business because they see how that improves their business.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's how you do anything is how you do everything. And like, we can't like, one of the things I've really learned as part of this, we can't bifurcate one part of our lives, like, you know, compartmentalize. Like, that's really like how things become stuck, right? We have to really integrate everything. And, you know, this has helped me, you know, healing has helped me be able to communicate my needs better. I didn't even know I had needs before, and let alone communicate them. And like, one part of your life translates to the other. So if you can't have a conversation in one part, you really can't have it in the other. So yes, I agree with you. I also, high performers, people that are uber successful, often suffer from these same things. But it's literally just a human problem. And it's really interesting to me to hear from people who've been pioneers in the space, right? That you've been doing this for so long before, like, they were even calling it somatics. Yeah, you were going to say something?
Yeah, well, yeah, I was going to say, yeah, it's like you said, it was fringe, and now it's not maybe fringe, and it's being accepted. And my partner's a couple therapist, and we work with couples using this, you know, technology I developed and her system too. But what we found is, what I see is somatic work and the work that my partner does, emotional focus therapy, the EFT, which is really with attachment for couples, are the two hottest therapies out there, because therapists are realizing that, the normal analytical and cognitive approach only goes so far. And they, these are bright, committed people that want to help people. And they're going, all right, there must be more. And as you said, all right, oh yeah, working with the body and working with how we need connection is the avenue to really improving the results in their therapy sessions.
Yeah, no, I mean, and by the way, attachment disorders or attachment issues are for everybody. Like I stopped drinking and I realized my issue was sex and love, and I'm going to be doing an after dark about that, because that's prevalent. That's you could be addicted to fitness, you could be addicted to work, you could be addicted to your partner who's dysfunctional to you. But I think that's really important that you talk about the couples therapy part, because I'd been in couples therapy with my ex in 2015, and he felt like he was being attacked, and he was, not by me but by the therapist, and he never felt safe. And if we had that opportunity to not only have him do his own work, I do my own work, and then come together, right, in that type of environment that takes somatics into account, like we wouldn't have waited until over a decade later and have like way more problems than we had then. And I just think that it's so important, because I don't believe in the power of couples therapy without individual work. I think you need to get to a baseline and then be able to come together, because again, it's like apples and oranges, right? Like I don't believe in that personally, but I think the EFT is really interesting. I would love to actually host your partner on the show as well, because attachments are real. And that's, to me, the attachment issue and those addictions have been way more of a hard thing to navigate than giving up alcohol. Like I smoke pot medicinally and I, plant medicine, but like alcohol is not my issue. So that's interesting when you bring that into this broader men's group.
Well, and what I realized in doing these groups was that I certainly knew about the somatics, and then I realized about how being in these groups and now the trainings is guys learn to connect. And so that's into the attachment stuff. And Sue Johnson, who developed emotional focus therapy, we had her on one of our programs a few years ago, and she said, as she understood what we were doing, if you were doing therapy, it would have been EFT.
Interesting.
That's a huge compliment.
Yeah.
Sort of, but yeah, in a general sense, maybe. And so what my partner Dahlia sees is that with good therapy, often people can come in without any prior training. And if the therapist and the model works and they're willing to do their work, they can come in cold and it could get results. Yes, there are a lot of therapists out there. Unfortunately, not every one of them is good. And I don't blame them so much as I blame the training.
Training, exactly. That's literally there. So there was a book written in the 70s. There's two books. One is like Dysfunctional Families or something. And it literally, like, one of the first stories, it was written in the 70s. Social workers and most psychotherapists are not trained in this. So they're not trained somatically. I agree with you. I know that because I was raised by them. I was surrounded by them, and I still couldn't find the right resources, right? I do EMDR now, and most people hate EMDR, but it's, for me, it's taken every charge, because I think visually, I think in every, like, it's a blessing and a curse to have my type of memory. And a lot of people have this, right? It lives in them. So there's so many resources, and people are so scared of just even sharing their deepest, darkest secrets with another person, even if it's with like someone who's specialized in, who does learn about this, So that's been one of my missions too, is try to help educate the mental health community, the medical community, like the misdiagnoses, the cancers of the world, the autoimmune diseases. Like I was misdiagnosed for years. I tried to get help before I ended up getting into getting to my rock bottom. And like the medical community thought I had they thought I had a tumor in my adrenal gland. But that was actually adrenal fatigue, and it was a function of lifelong survival mode. And if I did properly or even diagnosed, it would have been helpful. So I feel really fortunate. And I know from my own experience that like people are not trained in this. So I think it's really beautiful that you tie all those things together. So I know we're ending in a few minutes, but I would love to just hear a little bit about, there is another part of the functional men's work. Talk to me a little bit about what that means to you personally, because that really, I love that idea, because functional fitness is very real, and so is functional men's work. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, it's something I came up with, and so we have a training that we do and we're doing one in like a week or so down in Joshua Tree. And so what I realized is that,
awesome.
there's a natural arc of change, and this is the manual that guys get. And we use that arc as a sort of the spine of what we teach. And what I realized is that, as people heal or change or whatever you want to call it, they generally follow this arc. And that arc, if it's a real complete arc, involves a lot of things. It involves a somatic, involves a functional, involves a community. Yeah, and it involves our mind and, coming up with a new model that's more serving of the old model. And all that is sort of, in the functional men's work, which is, what functions, what develops or enhances our function. Because if we're not functioning well, we're not living well. And, every aspect of our life, from how our bodies perform, because as you know so well, the stress will affect our health, to our relationships will not function well. And just like functional medicine, it's really about, sort of deconstructing the parts that aren't working and bringing in what needs to allow that body or that person to function at a higher level.
Yeah. And like just learning those tools and those resources, right? Because you need to have a toolbox. It's not one thing, it's everything, right? So you need to know like what you could do in that moment to de-escalate or to regulate or whatever that looks like for you, to have that conversation, to feel safe. And no one ever teaches us that. So I think it's really beautiful. I'm really excited. Where can everyone find you that they can learn more?
Yeah, it's at MELD, MELD .community. So it's community spelled out. We have a newsletter that, men and women can sign up for. We have some free stuff. We have virtual courses, like our intro course. We have deeper courses and programs. And then we have our retreats. And then we also do a certification or advanced training for professionals and men that just want to go deeper in their change, and also, integrate it into their work or develop, let's say, a coaching practice. But we have therapists and psychiatrists that take that course.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've done a lot of my own trauma informed coursework. It's for myself, it's for others. It just helps you live better when you're trauma informed, when you know how to, and like, again, you could still, I lost my absolute shit a few weeks ago and I had to get back to a baseline, and I know now how to do that. And I used every single resource at my disposal. And I had to go into, I had to like really, like, I always say, like, lose your ego and heal the soul. But like, I ask for help, and I ask in a calm way, and no one ever helps. And then when I'm like, hey, I really need help, I just say it in the craziest ways. They're like, okay, you need help. So like, I think that there's something that is to be said for like men are afraid to ask for help. And then it just compounds over time. So I think that's really beautiful. I personally will sign up for your, on mel.community. And I would love to be a female at one of your experiential groups. Like, that sounds something that would be really actually wonderful for me and you.
Oh, thank you. I'd love to have you. I've done some co-ed work, and we're looking at doing some more co-ed work down the road. I've done, professional trainings for therapists, which are co-ed. And I'm sure we're going to do more. We're tied up with an organization that offers continuing education for therapists. Because again, therapists are hungry for this, and we have a psychiatrist coming to this training in a week that wants to learn how to do somatics for men.
Yes, I love that. Please, we're going to talk offline, because what I'm building out is it's called the Global How Are You Healing Ecosystem. It's in honor of my father Howard and mommy Lane, who spent their whole life trying to heal others, but never finding any healing themselves. And my mom dropped dead after a lifetime of just suddenly she wasn't sick. My dad killed himself, which I always knew was going to happen. So I want to help others find those resources. So I am putting something on my website so people could find your information. It's going to happen in time, but I would like to continue to chat with you and learn more about your resources and what you're doing, because I want to be able to provide, like, I want to share the gospel. This is how we heal society, is how we heal ourselves, and how we can live in the society together. Like, what else are we going to do? So that's really beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us. And I hope to get the chance to meet you in person one day.
Well, thank you, Lauren. It's an honor.
Thank you so much. Well, thanks to you, everyone, for joining another episode of the Trauma Translator. Please join us next week at 1 p.m. Eastern. And for another episode, we may or may not have a guest. Who knows? But don't forget to shop merch with a perp on ygoproject.com. That's merch with a purpose. And don't be a Richard. Have a great rest of your day.